Welcome back to another Drag Race Deep Dive. I'm Jack, and today we have a topic that no one's gonna agree on. Thought I'd get that out of the way before people start to comment. People are going to go to war over their picks, and that's completely fine. You can go ahead and comment, debate, it's all in good fun. RuPaul is old. Yes, I'm so sorry I'm the one who needed to say it. I still think Ru has a lot of time in the spotlight, but I don't see her hosting Drag Race forever. As of right now, I think we'll get to around season 20 before Ru starts to call it quits. She's explained on her podcast the extreme work her and Michelle have had over the past couple years, and I can kind of see her getting burnt out pretty soon. More often than not, I can kind of see Ru phoning it in or snapping at the girls, mostly in the UK. Obviously, she has moments every season where she loses her cool if a girl disrespects her or the queens aren't trying as hard, but it just seems so much more frequent and mean-spirited now. I can go into great detail about why the H&M fiasco, while iconic, was completely unjustified. Ru knows where to get the good TV moments, but I can see the calculations for these Emmy wins more and more now. The season 14 premiere, for example, was really funny because half the time Ru was just being herself, and it was, great to see.
Silence! RuPaul! I've heard enough.
But then the other half, like when she was talking to Willow Pill, was just kind of awkward.
It's always the case, isn't it? Tell me about your darkness.
I grew up chronically ill my whole life.
What is your chronic illness?
It just lacks a lot of subtlety, and it was obvious they wanted Willow to talk about her disease, but they just kind of forced it out without her talking about it naturally. Like Ru just straight up asked the question. It's like they're not naturally bringing up these subject matters, they're just forcing it out of the queens, and it's not that fun to see. At this point, I don't know if she wants to keep it up. Unless she gets the winners of UK or Down Under to cover her judging positions in those countries, I think it's eventually going to catch up to her and she's going to get burnt out. If it comes down to it, Ru will forever work if she needs to, but I think that she can start to position herself in a way where she can still make the money without needing to be the host. Well, that's it. Show's over. Unless we can find a replacement. Every year that Drag Race gets older, people talk about who should replace Ru if Ru were to step down. I talked in my recent video about how Drag Race is giving us more content than we could ever consume, and if Ru were to step down at any point during this era, it would be really detrimental to the brand. Even down the road, God forbid the spin-offs get canceled, the Drag Race brand could still be marketable if there's still main seasons in the US, but if Ru were to step down, that's a huge hit to the show. Remember when Tyra Banks didn't host that one season of America's Next Top Model and was replaced by Rita Ora? Kinda like that. The beauty of Drag Race, however, is that it showcases so many talented queens, and a lot of them could replace Ru really easily. The show is just presented in a way that shows all these queens being absolute superstars, so me and a lot of other fans know that there are queens that could replace Ru. The only question is who? There's a lot of names that float around on the internet, and I'm gonna go over the most popular ones today and tell you why or why not they would be the best fit.
Step aside, I'm back again. So hyped, so lit, adrenaline. I'm Shangela.
As mentioned in my last video briefly, Shangela knows how to play up a role on TV like no other person. Her placements were really good on her seasons, and she made an impact every time she was on the screen. From there, she's made appearances all over the map, all over TV, and even has an HBO show with Eureka and some other queen that's kind of slipping my mind right now, I don't know. If we're talking straight hosting capability, Shangela has the charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent to get the job. She already brings a ton of heart to wear here, so I could see her forming a strong connection with the competitors on the show. Shangela is the working girl, so if she's offered the position, there's no doubt in my mind that she would take it. The one main thing that is kind of holding her back is the fact that she isn't a winner. I know All Stars 3 is this whole thing, but it's honestly a strike against her. Every other queen we're talking about today has won the show, so unfortunately that's just a strike against Shangela when comparing her to the other girls. But again, if we're going off of straight personality and what she's done off the show, she is a really good fit. So I'm gonna put her at a pretty likely to be asked. This fucking light is just hitting me, I'm so sorry. Is that better or worse? Oh, well, okay. Now it's just lines on my face. That's cool. Hold on.
But Jack was unable to fix the lighting. Enjoy spotty appearances from the sun for the rest of the video. Seriously guys though, I'm so sorry. I had to work with natural lighting and it can kind of be a bitch sometimes.
Hey girls, my name's Alaska. I got a tiny little question to ask ya.
When doing research for this video, a name that came up a lot was Alaska. The thread I mainly looked at on Reddit was a lot closer to All Stars 2 than we are now. So that definitely influenced what people were saying about potential hosts. Alaska is the ultimate fan of Drag Race. She's covered basically every episode on her podcast, and she has a Rolodex of knowledge and references that a lot of other queens that could get this job just don't have. What's great is she also has these track records that back up her knowledge and show that she's a really strong competitor that could probably transfer to a host. Her finale speech in All Stars 2 sells you on the idea that she knows her shit about Drag Race, and that's the reason you should crown her, and that's the reason she's really marketable. Alaska's perspective on the show is really unique because of her knowledge of the franchise. You'll have queens coming up on this list that are arguably better hosters, but no one will come close to the knowledge of Drag Race like Alaska. This will come in extremely handy to further push the queens that are on the show. Alaska will waste no time starting where RuPaul left off. So if a queen were to not wow RuPaul based off of like a challenge, Alaska would probably not be wowed by it either. There are two things that are holding Alaska from being higher on the list, however. The first is an obvious one, and it sucks to say, but it's cause she's still close to Willem. Willem hasn't had the best relationship with WoW or RuPaul herself, so if Alaska were to get the job, I don't know if she could stay that close to Willem, or just like, I don't know, it would be really messy. This hasn't completely destroyed any of Alaska's relationships with WoW, obviously, but it's obviously going to affect her chances to get the ultimate position of the show. The second, and I don't know if this one's gonna hold up, but Alaska is not the most well-received queen or winner of the franchise. I think right after All Stars 2, everyone was like, yeah, Alaska deserved that win, and there was a small group that was like, oh, Katya, oh, Rob, and all that. But then like we go back, and like the more time that grows and the bigger that Katya gets, people start to call BS on Alaska winning, and now we're moving back towards a point where Alaska's win is respected again, but there's still a group of people that would be upset if she was given the hosting job after not getting a justified win. Do I think her win was justified? Yes. Best track record, all that. I know the lip syncs were a little contentious and like how she was acting in them, but she performed the best in the challenges. With a portion of the viewers not agreeing with the win and kind of being annoyed with Alaska, this might hurt the viewership of the show. So with taking all of that into account, I'm still gonna put Alaska slightly above Shangela on the list because she has the win under the belt and she just knows so much about Drag Race.
The name's Symone and I'm here for the throne. Big fish in a Arkansas ground.
This is the newest choice and it is a strong one. I'm going to try to eliminate my bias because I could not see any other queen aside from Symone winning season 13, and I just kind of love her to death, but I'm going to try to be completely unbiased with this. RuPaul has given Symone the most attention out of almost any other queen on the show in probably the past like 10 years. Many people have pointed out how much Symone reminds them of a young RuPaul, and I completely see it too. RuPaul is controversial, but she doesn't care. Ru is unapologetically herself, and I get the same vibes from Symone, without the controversy, of course. Symone is unapologetically herself, unapologetically gay, and unapologetically black. And that last one is so important. Obviously, I can't relate because look at me, but seeing her walk out on that runway or into a performance, embracing her culture, it's just such a wonderful thing to see. It's the exact type of energy we need for a successor to RuPaul, and I know Ru sees that too. If Ru was ever given the final say in who should take over, which I think is pretty likely, I'm pretty sure she would pick Symone. Ru has taken her to the Emmys, taken her on stage at the Emmys, interviewed her at Jimmy Kimmel. It's just all of this stuff is just pointing to the fact that Ru loves Symone, and I love to see that. Side note is also Mick is really close to Ru too, but I still think Mick has a lot of Drag Race left in him before he is considered for this position. I think that Mick is going to destroy an all-star season in the future. The downsides of Symone hosting are only going to go away in time. Symone is obviously the newest winner, so she hasn't had a lot of time to blossom with Drag Race under her belt, but you know, in time, I know people will see her as the superstar she is, and I think that in a couple years, if Ru were to step down, and I think it would be a while before Ru steps down, we can see Symone as the best choice. She is Ru's golden child, and if Ru continues to hold her close, I am just so excited to see what she has to offer. I'm gonna put Symone as a very high spot on this list. Bianca is one of the most successful names to come out of Drag Race since her dominance in season 6. She's had multiple movies, shows, and tours that have all been extremely successful. If there was ever a queen to maximize their influence from Drag Race, it would be Bianca. Other queens on the list have been given the flexibility to try different outlets and kind of figure out what they want to do with their career. Bianca knew exactly what she wanted to do before she went in the show, and after she just kind of expanded out. The Bianca brand is fully realized at this point, and I know she's comfortable where she's at. This is a positive for her in her life, but it's kind of a negative if she were to get picked for the host of the show. I don't really think she cares though. She has an amazing career where she's at right now, and hosting the show would only take away from that. Some queens like Bianca and another queen I'll get to later have amazing careers outside of the show that aren't completely tied to Drag Race, so I don't know if their success in other outlets and other fields would transfer as well back into the Drag Race franchise. A big thing that keeps Bianca from being a very likely choice is just the controversy that's sort of surrounding her. Bianca is an insult comic and she says offensive things all for the sake of comedy, and you know, there's a lot of debate over that, but like, if you're the host of a multi-million-dollar franchise, it's kind of tough to do the career of insult comedy and still be squeaky clean and like a good representation for the show. I don't think Bianca wants to stay squeaky clean. It would also burn some bridges in the Drag Race franchise with queens who are on like a good terms with WoW already, like I don't want to, like Blair St. Clair. It's kind of a similar situation to Alaska where they were extremely successful and dominant on their season that they won, but going back, I don't know if they would be the most well received. I like Bianca. I think she's messed up and gone too far a lot, but she's a smart queen and she doesn't really care what people say. I think she could bring in a lot of the older fans who maybe stopped watching the show because the name that's surrounding her, and like it would be a lot of good ratings, but also a lot of the newer fans who are more into canceling her for being controversial would probably stop watching the show as a boycott. I think it's just kind of too risky to pick her, and also I don't think she would want to do it, so I'm gonna put her at the lowest spot on the list right now.
Where a queen who deserves to win doesn't win.
Yeah, vanilla.
A name I was surprised to see pop up a lot was Raja. Raja was already very established in TV before Drag Race, being a makeup artist on America's Next Top Model, and she was the first winner on the show to push the runways as like the main aspect of her talents. Her legacy has inspired a lot of queens, and she's still obviously on really good terms with WoW because she hosts Fashion Photo Review, and spoilers, she is on the All Winners season. Speaking of that season, I really think we need to see that before I can actually gauge where to put Raja on this list. I think she can really fit the vibe of a host and has what it takes. I mean, just her vibe alone. Do you guys remember season 11 when she just walked out on the main stage and just stole the show? Like that right there is just like a host vibe. The biggest issue with Raja is her lack of connection to the younger generation of fans. She is a pioneer of fashion on the show, but a lot of fans just don't know where it came from. I'm positive she's going to showcase all of her talents on the All Winner season, but as of right now, I'm going to put her at the bottom of the list.
Violet Chachki.
Looking smart and tartan.
Get a reveal.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Oh!
Violet and Raja kind of go hand in hand. The polish on these queens is unmatched, and I would love to see Violet host. I think her time on the show and her career afterwards have just aged like fine wine. People weren't big fans of season 7, but the fans have grown to appreciate Violet's performance and talents on and off screen. Fans seem to still really enjoy her personality, if that one episode of The Pit Stop is anything to say.
I actually kind of liked her green CEO.
No. The downside to Violet is the same as the downside to Raja. Both have been shown to be strong competitors in the past, but seeing them on the show one more time would just kind of solidify that they are still those bitches. They both have what it takes to be the best fit, but one more active reassurance like being on the show is really welcomed. If I were to rank them though, I would put Violet higher than Raja because she still has that connection to the younger fan base, and she's kind of positioning herself back into the Drag Race franchise, starting a show with Got Mick.
And I don't see you out there walking children in nature.
Could you imagine?
Step into the plate, I'm Trixie Mattel. Got my name in the game, better learn it well, cause I'm the MVP heading up to bat.
Trixie Mattel is a tough one to judge. Before people comment, I like Trixie. I really like Trixie. I think Trixie's smart. I watched all her videos. She's not my favorite, but I think she is just one of the best queens to come out of the franchise business-wise. I think it ultimately comes down to how much you take into account placement on the show and like her win in All Stars 3. Trixie won All Stars 3 with a lot of asterisks behind that win. This is no fault to her because everyone was just kind of dealt a weird hand of cards in All Stars 3, but it is a reason to take into account. There are a large pool of people who scream that her win wasn't justified. Trixie herself kind of even acknowledges that.
That genuinely sucks.
It did.
To have kind of like a consolation, or what do you call that? Like if you win by default or whatever.
Yeah,
that sucks.
Yeah, I mean, it was still like I was still thrilled about it. I was one of the
Still
happiest
get the
moments
money.
Yes, and like confetti raining from the sky, crying. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Couldn't believe it. However, what do I wish I would have like had to fight Shangela to the death?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Of course.
So I think she would face a lot of backlash if she was chosen to be the host. Regardless of what you believe about the outcome of All Stars 3, you can't deny the empire Trixie has set up for herself. That's where all of her support comes from to be host. I don't think we have a lot of fans walking away from All Stars 3 or Season 7 being like, oh yeah, Trixie, that's the host right there. People walk away from her shows, her tours, her makeup line, and think, oh, that's a host right there. I think the businesswoman in Trixie would love to take the hosting job because it expands her brand exponentially. But the competitor in Trixie is a different story. Being invited on other competition reality shows is great for Trixie because she's an established drag queen who's getting invited on because she's an established drag queen. But being invited to host the show where she was partially hurt by her win is really different. I feel like it would take a lot of her to accept the role because she wouldn't feel up to the task or feel worthy, but at the same time, I really could see her in the hosting position just because of the brand that she set up for herself. Another thing is that Trixie is established, successful, and working on so many projects at once, it's kind of a similar situation to Bianca. She definitely doesn't need Drag Race to continue her success, and I think going back would kind of detract from her brand and where she would want to go in the future. Being the host of Drag Race would kind of tie a queen down to that a lot of the time. But it's clear that Trixie loves going on ventures that are extremely different from Drag Race, and I think going back to host would kind of, put her back in this box that she doesn't want to be in. But again, she does love hosting, and she's hosted with Michelle before, so I don't know, it could go either way. But if Michelle also does step down, Katya is obviously going to take that spot too. I'm going to put Trixie above Bianca and maybe above Shangela. I think if the projects were low and the timing was right, she could take the job. I think it's finally time to bring out the poll I did a couple weeks ago. Randomly, I asked the same question that's the topic of this video. Who should take over if Ru were to hypothetically step down? I gave the choices that most frequently popped up online and put the other category in because there's a lot of people that could take over. Bob the Drag Queen was the overwhelming pick. Again, I'm gonna try and eliminate my biases because Bob is probably my top 3 favorite queens of all time, but I still genuinely think that Bob is the best fit. If the showrunners want to continue the vibe we have right now, I think Symone would be the best fit. Polished, talented, and a very welcoming vibe in the same realm of RuPaul. If the showrunners want to further the brand and breathe a new vibe into the show, I think Bob would be the best pick. Bob and Symone are very similar, with the only difference being that Bob has more time to grow off the show. And again, this argument may be completely null in the future when Symone has more time to grow outside of just being the winner. But for right now, let's get back to Bob. Bob is established in multiple drag scenes, has had multiple comedy specials, shares that HBO show with Shangela, and is overall the most well-rounded pick in every aspect of judging. The one thing that people love to bring up is that Bob's taste in fashion is questionable. Maybe on her season it wasn't the most refined, but again, people only take people's seasons as like reasoning to why to host. But then like when they talk about Trixie, it's like off the show. Like if you look at Bob right now, the amount of fashion projects Bob has done has shown that she has the taste level. Obviously, I don't think Bob has the same reference knowledge as Raja or Violet, but I still think that she appreciates fashion, and obviously she's not going to dress herself, so if she's critiquing other queens, it shouldn't be as bad. Bob is also the most neutral answer out of everyone on this list. If I were to sit down a bunch of Drag Race fans in the room and go down the line of telling them that each of these queens were going to be given the host job, I think Bob would provoke the most positive or neutral responses. It's not a situation where I tell someone that Bob's hosting and they would be like, why? Why Bob? People would be like, okay, that makes sense. It's not my pick, but it's whatever. You know what I mean? Another big thing that Bob brings to the table that isn't present in a lot of the other queens or just isn't as big is her advocacy for all types of drag. I believe that every queen on this list believes that all drag is valid, but Bob is just the most outspoken about it. And I think that the host of the show believing that all drag is valid is really good for a drag show. Anyway, Bob is just the most outspoken on the topic, and I know that she'll bring this into the show. I think that her opinions are also just super neutral, fueled by rational thought, unless she's talking to Monet, and she would be nothing short of great representation for the show. As of right now, I'm going to put her at the top of the list, but the more we get to see Symone, it might go back and forth. I would love to see them co-host, but I'm getting ahead of myself. One of my tier 3 patrons has something to say about Bob too. Alvaro says, I would say Bob the Drag Queen would be a good fit. She has charisma and a host essence. I know some people question her taste level and her looks, but since she'll be judging other looks, I don't think it would be a problem. I read someone proposing a rotating panel, in the sense that the judge would be the different winner in each episode. I think it could be interesting since they would have to please and impress someone different each week, but that might be messy since they might be told to change something that might not be important to the following judge. Symone and Alaska would also be great options. I also think Dela and Asia, but since they didn't win, it may not be a great idea in terms of good TV. That being said, after last episode, I think we could perfectly make it Lizzo's Drag Race. Or JackFed's Drag Race, why not? I did not pay them to say that. Thank you so much to Alvaro for this opinion. If you would like for your opinion to be shared, head over to my Patreon. There's a lot of cool benefits over there. Alvaro brings up an excellent point though, and I think this is the most likely outcome if Ru were to step down. A rotating panel of queens to judge the contestants each week. People have brought this up a lot and I just think it's a wonderful idea, but I think there needs to be a main judge that's always there, and again, I'm gonna pick Bob for that. If Michelle were to step down, obviously Monet would step in, or maybe even Peppermint, and then there would be a rotating list of former superstars. Maybe Bob isn't the most well-versed in fashion. Well, for the ball episode, they could get Violet and Raja on. A singing challenge? Bring on Jinx and Trixie. The list goes on and the versatility is great. The perfect panel is Bob as the main host, Monet being Michelle, and then maybe Alaska and Symone being the alternating Carson and Ross of each week. And then there would be a rotating superstar each week. So maybe for the ball, the rotating judging panel could be Bob, Monet, Alaska, guest judge of Violet, and then like a guest judge celebrity if they still need the ratings for that. Maybe I'm overcomplicating it, but it's a cool system and it keeps everyone happy.
Willow pill. Hi, Willow pill. Willow pill. Willow pill.
Of course, this is all hypothetical because Ru still has a lot of hosting years left in her career. I have my gripes with Ru, but I still care about her and the franchise as a whole. Burnout could be a real problem that could happen in the next couple years. So having a backup strategy just in case is never a bad idea. Some people believe that the only way we're gonna get a new host is if we rip it out of Ru's cold, dead hands. Dead being metaphorical, not actually, like not literal. And other people believe that there's no show without Ru because of course it is called RuPaul's Drag Race. I don't want to believe either of these though because I don't think Ru would be that stingy about it, and also I don't think that the show would completely get canceled, especially when it's just becoming so successful. And of course speculation is fun and Ru would still be making money on the show. Thank you guys so much for watching this deep dive. I know it took a little longer to get out and I don't know, there's a lot going on. I'm about to head back down to college, so it's gonna be a weird transition, but of course I'm still gonna be making videos. Thank you to my tier 1 patrons. Thank you to my tier 2 Patreons, Jordan, Jared, Justin, Joel, a lot of J names, and Mark. And thank you to my tier 3 patrons, Nancy and Alvaro. If you want to go support me on Patreon, the link's in the description. I'll see you guys in a couple weeks with a new deep dive. I actually have a couple more videos coming out that aren't deep dives that I just kind of wanted to do, so be expecting to see those soon.